Hey guys, welcome back to Iterating Always. Picking up where we left off on the Salesforce Org Plus application. But before I get back into the code, I wanted to show you exactly what's going on in my GitHub repo. The repository here, let's go into it. SF Org Pulse, as you can see, beautiful. I'm glad things are still where they are from last time. All right, the releases. Okay, so this is what I want to talk about today, just before we get into it. You'll see a link to a release on the right side. So, as a Salesforce professional, or what they're starting to call us now, an admin-developer, it's an administrator plus a developer mashed together. More and more of us are working with Git day to day as Salesforce, at least I believe so, is moving towards more source driven development. You can make commits at all kinds of points during a build. You can rack up, honestly, dozens of them. Some matter and some are just fixing a typo. So to make life easier for you watching, I planted a flag on the one that matters. I tagged it as a release and as version 0.1.0. That's my way of saying this commit is the important one. So if you look at the source code, it'll be here and it'll be exactly how it was done inside or within the episode. A description of exactly what we did and a link to the episode as well. So this is just a way to keep things organized. And with that out of the way, let's get into it. Let's go into our code space. Okay, just a little bit of housekeeping before we begin. I am going to change this a little bit so it makes a little bit more sense. It's easier to read. So let's call this cool. So the last episode, this SF Org Pulse engine learned to hold one user, Maria. And she basically exists as a handful of data points. And funny enough, that's what Google sees us as too, right? Okay, anyways. Python here actually understands it as different data points. So we have text with the first name, last name, a number with the employee ID, email, a true or false flag. This all makes up data that holds a person. The issue is that one user isn't an organization. The moment you have a second employee, 6 loose variables stop scaling. Nothing ties them together. Nothing says these belong to the same person. There's nothing here that does that. So today we will fix that. We give one user a single container. We line up that container against an actual Salesforce record, and then we go from one user to many. So if you look at this like an admin for a second, we have Maria here. First name, last name, email, employee ID, if they're a full-time employee, and if they're active, right? It makes sense. If a second person walks in the door, what do I do? Make 6 more variables? That's not a system. That's a panic attack waiting for the third hire, the fourth hire, the fifth hire. It will never end. And that doesn't work out because we're trying to hold variables to a person, and that doesn't work. In Salesforce, I would never do this. I'd never store one person as six fields floating in space with no construct holding them together. The record is the thing that says all of this is one human. And that's the thing I realized staring at this file. Python's had this container the whole time. I just never used it here. Actually, scratch that. I've used this idea 10,000 times. I called it a record. Okay, so what we do first is we are going to go into Salesforce. And yeah, maybe it might be a good idea to log in. Okay, so I'm going to go and transition into Salesforce. And this is before we touch any Python. Let's actually go into the ground that you may already know. And visually, you can see better what I'm referring to. Let's go into setup. I'm going to Object Manager. Okay, so a user record is essentially a set of fields, and each field has a name and a value. Email and the value. Profile and the value. Active, checked or not. So active right there, checked or not. In Salesforce, you've created thousands of these. Before we touch any ground on Python, let's stand on ground you already know. This is a record in Salesforce, a user. And what is a record really? It's a set of fields, and each field has a name and a value, right? So we have a name here. We've got the first name, last name. So the name is the field, first name, last name is the value. Then we have email, and the email address is the value. And basically, this kind of just is a collection of fields that make up one record, and that record is me, Neeraj Kamra. But in Salesforce, you created thousands of these. Every time you clicked into a record, you read a field name on the left and a field value on the right. Field name, field value, field name, field value. Hold on to that notion. Okay, so just to show you how this looks in VS Code. All right. Okay, so let's go ahead. So what I did there is redid everything we did earlier. But look what's changed. I put everything inside one container and with the name user. So just like I showed you in Salesforce, this is a user record. And in the user object, which contains all of the user records, which would be the user data, we did the exact same thing here. We established the user, and into that, we added the first name, last name, email, all the same variables we had above. And so the first name is Maria, last name Singh, email Maria, and so on and so forth. We know that already because that's exactly what we did the last episode with the variable and then the value, the field name and value. Now, this structure in Salesforce, it's called an object. In Python, this is called a dictionary. And the name is the best hint anyone ever gave us of what it does. It's in a dictionary, you have a key, and the key is like a word. In a real dictionary, we have a word and the definition. In a Pythonic dictionary, we have a key, in this case, first name or last name, email, employee ID, and the value is what we call the actual data. So in this case, it would be Maria, last name is Singh. You look up a dictionary, you look up the word, and you get the meaning, and that's exactly what we're doing here. So now I went back and forth on something here, and I want to show you the actual decision because it's the kind of thing experience makes you stop and think about. My first instinct was to name these keys exactly how they are in Salesforce. In Salesforce, they're referred to as the API names. But here's the thing. We're doing this in Python. And the code should read in the language of the system that it lives in. That's my belief anyways. So inside this file, the keys stay Pythonic. We have lowercase, clean, and in the Salesforce API name, it'll go into the comments. And the real mapping will happen later on, and we'll do this in the next iteration or the next season of my videos. And that's not me dodging the connection, but that's how real integrations are built. Each system keeps its own naming, and you map them where they meet. You keep the seam clean. I wanted to point out a quick, honest note while we're here. 5 of these 6 fields, or keys as we like to say, map directly to a standard Salesforce field. So if you go back here, I can show you. And we have first name, last name, and then we have email. But there's the FTE fraction, which means full-time equivalent. There's no standard user field for that. So I'm not going to pretend there is. In a real build, that's a custom field or a calculation. I'd rather tell you no clean mirror here than force one. For a mirror between what we're doing in Python to what we're doing in Salesforce. Forcing parallels that don't exist, that's how you lose people who actually know the platform. So I don't want to abandon my brethren in the Salesforce world. So that's why I'd rather get ahead of that and let you know that's kind of what's going on here. So let's go back to Python. So what I'm going to do now is how we know that this is all part of the same container, and in this case, the same dictionary, which would be user. And to illustrate that, I'll show you exactly how we would call the email in that dictionary. Let's do another one too. Let's print out if they're active. This was from the previous code that we had, but from the new code, I said to print the user email, and that's exactly what we did. Because now, under user, under this dictionary, we have established that the email is mariasingh.company with the space. So basically, the system knows that when I call that user and I'm calling for a specific field name, it knows exactly what I'm talking about. So I don't have to look through a million variables to find data. I can go under that one specific dictionary of that person, which would be the record, and then look for that specific item that I need. That's how dictionaries work. I enter in the key, and actually to print out the key from that dictionary, the user, and it gives me the value. That's basically a field reference. That's every formula you've ever written that said, go get me the value in this field. It's the same move, just different punctuation. Let me just slow down here a little bit. Because the next idea is the one that I actually want you to feel it, not just watch me type. So picture a filing cabinet. Each folder in a filing cabinet, let's say, holds one employee. In this case, Maria Singh, or me, Neeraj Kamra. Now, inside the folder, they have their name, their email, whether they're active. That folder, one person, all their detailed and labeled slots, that's our dictionary, which we said before, which is user. This is the dictionary. Now, the cabinet drawer itself, the thing that holds all the files or all the folders lined up in order, that's a list. And we can see here with the curly braces, that means that everything we're putting here is in a dictionary, and we have the key and the value format, like how we put it before. And that's basically the equivalent of a file. That's the folder in a filing cabinet. And now we have a cabinet drawer, and that's a list, which is a different construct within Python. And in the list, the drawer doesn't care what's written inside any folder. Its whole job is to keep them in order, keep them countable, keep them together. So what we're doing here is a list of dictionaries. That's what we're going to build out right here. We've already built the dictionary. We're going to build a list of dictionaries. So it's basically we're building a drawer full of employee folders. That's the entire idea. And if that sounds familiar, it should. That's a Salesforce list view. The drawer is the list view. Every row is a folder. Every folder is a record. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create the actual list. And so we'll call it staged user. And the brackets here are different. So the dictionary brackets are curly brackets, and the list brackets are the square brackets. So now that we've created this list, we've got a list now. It's not doing it. I'm going to add in the user dictionary. To do that, I would just pass in user. All right, so now we are going to build another dictionary. So let's go and call it second user. I'll show you exactly how I did that. I could just copy and paste and just replace it, but let's make sure you guys follow along quickly and see everything that needs to be said. I already established the API names, so I'm not going to redo them. No spaces. Okay. So essentially, we have a list now, and right now that list contains one user profile, which points to this user dictionary, and within this user dictionary contains all this data. And now onto the staged users list, I'm going to add in this second user file folder. And how do I do that? We'll take staged users, and we're going to use the append method here, which so we can see here staged users, which is the list, and I'm appending, which means I'm adding another value in there. It doesn't have to be a dictionary. It can actually be anything really, but I'm adding in something, and I'm passing in the variable or second users, which holds all the data for David Okafor. So just to recap, I take Maria's record under user, I drop it in the drawer, which is staged users, one folder in. Then a second person, David, he's working half the time, he's a slacker, and he's not active right now. Again, slacking some more. And the same folder shape, and it's basically I drop him in with his details. So now, and now our drawer grows. And just to illustrate what I'm doing. Okay, so staged users again is the list. And now what I'm doing is that within the list, we have two values. So our list right now contains the value of user and second user. And in Python, the way that would be read in a list is it's numbered. In Python, the first value of anything in a list would be a placeholder of 0. So user, which is Mariah Singh's data, would be 0. And then for David's data, the second file folder, it'd be as 1. Within the staged users list, I want to pull out the first file folder. So let's go and do that. Square brackets again. That'll tell me the first value. And then what I want from there is I want to just pull out the first name. Let's run this bad boy and I'll show you exactly how that worked. Okay, let me just make this a bit higher so you can see this. Ran everything again, and we're just looking at the last two lines. So this went into staged users, which is the file cabinet, and it grabbed the first file folder in the top drawer and named it and pulled out the first name. And the first name is David, which basically equates to what we have here. And then at the bottom here, we did a print statement, and a string statement, which takes the length of the staged users. So the length basically counts how many values are within staged users, which is the list. And we looked at the length of just 2 because we have Maria Singh and David. And here's why it's useful. I could reach into the drawer, grab the second folder, which was David, and pull one specific detail out of it. One line. Very easy to do, like I just said. I just called it quickly. Now picture that drawer with 5,000 folders instead of 2. That same one line still works. That's the moment this stops being a toy and starts being an engine. You've been looking at these your whole Salesforce career. Every list view is a drawer full of folders. The difference now is you've built the drawer yourself. Okay, so just to make things one-to-one, and I did show you the user profile before, which is standard Salesforce object. I'm going to create this in Salesforce. So we have a one-to-one situation, and we have one-to-one data points and objects and what have you. So I'm going to go ahead and let's go into Object Manager. Let's create a custom object. Okay, what are we going to call this? Let's call this staged user. Allow a search. Okay, so let's just keep this for now. Let's change this later. Okay, so we built a new object. And so essentially the object in Salesforce would equate to us creating a list of staged users. And then what we'll do is go into field and relationships, and I will create new field. Okay, let's call this email. Beautiful. To hold emails. Okay. Okay, that's fine. Let's create another one. This will be our unique key for our users. Do one more. And we'll make this a checkbox. So now the fields have been built. We can see here email.c, employee ID, FTE fraction is active. These are all things that we have used as names within what we need. And even staged username, okay? Which will combine first name and last name. And that kind of just wraps up everything that we're going to do today. So just to know that what I've built in Python, I have easily built into Salesforce. And just to visually show you that what we're doing here, I can go ahead and show you how this would look if we were to create a record. And just to make things easy on you guys, I'll do that. I'll be straight where the actual work was done today because it wasn't the typing. The part that made me stop and think wasn't how to write it, it was whether I was writing it correctly. Should the keys match Salesforce or stay Pythonic? That's not a beginner question, that's an architecture question. And I've answered the same shape of question in Salesforce 100 times. What do we name this? Who reads it next? Where does it have to travel? That's the part of this that isn't new to me. The syntax was new, the judgment wasn't. And that's the kind of the whole point of this channel showing up again. So here's the thing I actually want you to take from today. You did not learn a new concept this episode. You learned a new mutation for a concept you've owned for a decade. A dictionary is a record. The keys are your field names. The values are your field values. Every record you've ever opened in Salesforce was a dictionary someone else built for you behind a nice interface. So you never had to type in the brackets like I'm doing here. Python just handed you the brackets. That's the whole difference. One thing worth knowing, the shape, keys, and values, it's where every modern API and every AI system passes back and forth. It's called JSON. But under the hood, you just wrote the native language of the AI era and called it a user record. When I started this, I thought the hard part would be learning to think like a programmer. Turns out a lot of the time, I already do. I just had a wizard clicking the brackets for me when I created all the field values within Salesforce. The engine holds many users now, not just one. But I planted a problem back in episode 1 and I left it sitting in plain sight. Maria's email that has a trailing space and some messy capitalization. Right now, the engine doesn't care, but a real organization would. So next, we make the many trustworthy. We teach the engine to clean what it's given before it trusts it. That's where this goes. Thank you for joining me on Iterating Always, and let's touch base in a little bit. Take care.